Hello and welcome to Conan Exiles, an open world sandbox survival game available on PlayStation, Xbox and PC. And this beginner's guide series will be being done on the PS5, so it will also be relevant to PS4 as well on the controls side of things and a lot of the visuals. But some of the things that are shown in this guide will also be relevant to the other platforms as well. So veteran players will hopefully learn something as well, but this is primarily aimed for new players, especially to PlayStation 4 and 5, so I hope you found this one useful. There are lots of different ways to play Conan Exiles. You can play online on an online server, either solo or with friends, or you can play single player co-op, which this guide is going to be done on the single player co-op for the benefit of this guide series. You can also invite your friends to join you on the single player version as well, but they can only join through an invite from you. Or as I say, you can play online with friends on an official Conan Exiles server or on a community owned server owned by another player. And there are 3 different modes that you can use for online. You can play PvP, PvEC, which is player versus environment conflict, or PvE. As I say, in the online version there are 3 playstyles that you can choose from. You have PvP, which is player versus player, PvE conflict, which is not quite PvP but also not quite full PvE, and then of course PvE, which is the style of this beginner's guide series on the single player, where with PvE it's you versus the environment, and you can work with other players and other clans to defeat enemies and have fun around the world. PvEC is still PvE, but where you can kill other players out and about in the world, but you cannot raid bases and steal anything from people. And then PvP is pretty much as it explains. It is literally, you can go out and kill a player at any time or be killed by a player at any time. However, there are specific time zones depending on where you live as well, where PvP is enabled, so hours of the day in an allotted time slot where full PvP is enabled, meaning that you can go out and kill other players, but also raid other players' bases, destroy other players' bases and steal all their loot. So there's 3 different ways that you can play on online. And with single player you can choose to play on a server which is your own dedicated server that no one can access apart from you, but your friends can join you. But the only way they can join you is if you invite them to it, and you can have a bit of fun playing with your friends on single player. Right, so here we go with our single player game, and at this point you get to choose between creating a male or a female character, and I think we're going to go with female just as we always do. And then we've got lots of options up on the top left here, where you can choose your character's race, religion and their overall appearance. I'm going to go with Van Dayen, I believe it's pronounced. Religion, I like to go with Set, but there's many different ones and you can scroll through each one and actually read what the benefits of those are. Not too important being that it's PvE or single player, but entirely up to you which one you prefer. Voice options.
The gods are watching.
Death is coming.
Death is coming.
Cut me down, please.
The gods are watching. Cut me down. Death is coming.
I like to go with that one. Head options, the very option is you can kind of change the way the face looks. I like to go with the very end one at the left because that just seems to be the nicest looking one personally. Skin tone, you can change that up or down depending on how pale or tanned you want them to look, shall we say. Next one is your hair options, and there's lots of different options to choose from. All different ones there that we can choose. Typically I tend to like this one, so we're going to go with that one. Then for hair colour, going to go with that one. Eyebrows you can change the colour, eyeshadow, lips, and then you've got this option where you can sort of dial in things even more to what you want to do. I don't tend to bother with this too much, but I'll just skip to it quickly so you can kind of see what you can do, but there's lots of different options there. This one determines how tall or short your character is, so to the right they're taller, to the left they're shorter. I'm going to go about there. This option determines how muscular or non-muscular they are. About there for that one. This one for the female, as you can see, determines chest size, and then for a male it determines the male regions, shall we say, to keep it a bit more polite. And then of course this option is for nudity. Now this doesn't apply on server side, this is just your side of things, so the client side, and depending on which version of the game you own will determine what allowance of nudity you can get. Now if you own the UK, European or some American versions of the game, I believe it is, you can have up to full nudity, whereas some regions only allow partial. And the way it works in game is that you select the option you want from your end. So say you selected partial but a server allows full, as a lot of the official Conan servers do, certainly on the UK and Europe version, then you can have up to full nudity. But if you've only selected partial, you will only see for the women top half, obviously. But if you select no nudity and a server allows full, just because the server allows full nudity, you can select to have none or partial or full, depending on which you prefer. And it works exactly the same way, the opposite way, that if you want full nudity but a server only allows partial because of where it's hosted, then you will only see partial in that server, as that's the way it works. So that's it for the settings there. So we'll hit confirm. Now we can hit square and you can name your character. So we'll just go with that for the moment. And then we can hit confirm and that will launch us into the game. And then you'll get a little cinematic, which I'm going to skip because I don't want to spoil it for you guys now, so you can see it when you load up. So I'll bring you back in the next bit. So here we are now on the Exiled Lands. We've loaded into the map. And the first thing you'll notice are lots of UI on the screen, one at the top left, one at the top right and the bottom right. And the bottom right is your contextual controls, which will show you what the controls are for various actions in the game. And for me this is the PlayStation 5, so these will also be relevant to the PlayStation 4. And then the top right screen is your journey steps, which I really highly recommend following early game. These will really help you to get to grips with the game and understand how things work. And then the top left is our important character UI. The very top bar that you can see moving up gradually is the XP gain, so that's the rate that you'll gain XP. Depending on the server that you're playing on, it will either be at the default speed or it may be sped up. The red bar with the numbers below that is our HP or our health pool, and then the yellow colour bar below that is our stamina bar. So the more you run around and do things, the more this will drain, but then it will regenerate over time. And then the 4 circles below that are your thirst, hunger and your temperature and encumbrance. So you need to certainly keep an eye on your food and drink meters there to make sure you eat and drink constantly. Your temperature is more considerate of when you go into some of the more dangerous areas in the map. So up in the frozen north, which is snow, or up in the very far north, which is the volcano, which can get extremely hot, but we'll come to look at those in a later episode, just so that you understand those a bit more. But for the moment we don't really need to worry about those too much. The ones we need to watch is our food and drink, and then our encumbrance, to make sure, because we're not really carrying any clothing yet, or we don't have any attribute points yet that will help us reduce the weight penalty of carrying things. So that's the UI you will see on screen. If I hit my left arrow key on my controller, you bring up this menu which gives you Battle Pass, which will actually be going in the future, so ignore this one. The Bazaar, which is the in-game store that you can take a look at. And then this one here, Journeys. If we click on this, this brings up the journeys in a bigger menu for you, so it's much easier to follow and is a quicker shortcut to that one. Down arrow on the D-pad brings up these lots of different things here as you learn emotes and things in game. Right arrow brings up your in-game map, which, as you can see, this is the map of the Exile lands, which is labelled alphabetically from A to P, left to right, and then from 1 at the bottom all the way up north. And the way the game is laid out is the further north you go, the harder the enemies will hit and the more damage you'll take. This area is what is known as the Unnamed City, which is undead skeleton creatures and things, for example, and they hit extremely hard, so I recommend avoiding this early game until you've got some half decent weapons and armour to deal with them. There are various world boss spawns, so 3 skull boss spawns around the map, which can be hard to kill, so again avoid those early game. And then the further up you go, the harder things start to get, but we'll look into those as we come to them. Then, as I say, you've got the Frozen North and the Volcano, which are the hardest points up north. Swamp area and the jungle in the far east. And then over to the far west you will discover, which we'll discover eventually, a little city known as Sepameru or Sepamaru, City of the Relic Hunter, which is a friendly city. That does have 1 or 2 hostiles in there, but is overall a friendly city, but again we'll discover that at a later time. Your first aim when you start the game is to kind of stick around this area, which is the river, or as veterans call it, Noob River. Just avoid this camp at the very end, because even though it's a very low faction, the Defari camp is quite large and they will overwhelm you quite easily early on. But our first objective is to start following our journey steps, and to follow them from where we are just here. You can see a little mark here, this is where we are. We want to aim to get down here to Noob River where we can start our journey, and our very first step is to take our first steps. As you can see, nice and easy. This you can interact with, you don't have to do now, but you can, which will kind of talk to you.
Of civilization, beyond the passage of our highways, lie the wild places of the world, where untamed savages make endless war upon each other. You cannot pass into the endless wastes enslaved. Your bonding prevents it. Return. Follow the road. Any road. All roads lead to the city.
Yep, so that'll talk away to you. So you want to get off this spawn point. As you can see, that's now come up because we've investigated the smoke. You'll see a chest like this that we can interact with. Take the goodies out of there. Then that's given us a water skin, so we're going to pop that on our hot bar or our hot wheel using L1. Then our right toggle and X. And then we have some food, so we'll eat that and take a drink. So that's that first stage of our journey complete. So to access that menu, if you press your big button on the middle of your controller, or your touch pad as you want to call it, brings up this menu, which again, the middle UI at the very top is your health pool and your stamina pool, and also your player character level, and the game goes up to level 60. And because this is single player, we are playing PvE, but there are other options, as we said earlier, that you can play as well. But this is a PvE run that we're going to be doing. So then beneath those bars you've got your armour, which is nothing for us at the moment because we're not actually wearing anything, and then the armour type, which is classed as light because we're not actually even wearing any clothes yet. Below that is our character image, and then these squares are armour slots, so the head, chest, hands, legs and feet, which you'll see as we progress through the game what the different things are that we can wear. Menu on the right hand side is your character's crafting menu, so these are all items that can be crafted on your person. And then the left hand menu is your character's inventory, so what you're carrying at the moment, which as we can see there is a piece of roast haunch and a little bit of stone. So anything that you craft on the right hand menu will form in the crafting queue at the bottom right there, as you can see, and then it will appear in your inventory over on the left. Then if we press R2 we get this menu, which will start to come to as we start to get into the game and we unlock various things as our journey tells us to. R2 again, these are our attribute points, which can help to boost our strength with strength based weapons and armor, agility again with agility based weapons or armor, vitality, which is a really important one early game to help boost our health pool and our recoveries. Authority we're not going to worry about at this stage because we're going to discuss this when we get to the actual thrall taming, as it's called in the game, or friendship making as we like to call it in this channel. Grit, which determines our stamina pool and our stamina recovery, and then our expertise, which helps us determine our harvesting ability, and also one of the superb perks at 20 points in this one, Beast of Burden, which would allow us to run around fully over encumbered but still able to move at full sprint and carry as much as we need to do. So our early game focus is to get up our grit, our expertise and vitality, and then later on if we want to spec into some sort of a combat build, be that agility or strength, we can look at later, and we can also incorporate that with some followers, but we'll come to that in a later video. R2 again will bring up this menu, which on the left should tell you about any buffs that you have from food or potions that you've eaten, and then this is a full description on the right here of your character stats for all the different things that we've discussed so far. You can find them here, and then that notification that just popped up on our screen then means we've just gained another level. R2 again is a bigger version, as I just showed you, of the journey steps, which is easier to see if you follow this from this way, to be quite honest. R2 again is where we can create a clan name. We can talk about that a bit later on. This is where once you start making friends, be they animals or humans, you can see them in this list here. And then this brings us back to our Exiles map, which is a lot quicker and easier to access with the right arrow on your D-pad. You can pull it up instant. So then, if we get going on our journey, you interact with bushes by using your interact key. So for me, as I say on console, is square, which applies to PS4 and PS5. Takes a little while, but as you can see, that's now complete. So then we can go over to our right hand menu, where you've got all sorts of different things that you can use over here. But the thing that we're looking for the most is some shoes, some hands, legs and the chest, and as we say, that will craft up, and if you're not wearing any armour it will automatically pop it straight onto your character for you. So we've now got some very coarse clothing, which is better than wearing nothing but still doesn't give us any huge armour value. A piece of paper will tell you a little story, so you can pick this up as well.
Left to rot among the ruins of the past. There are others here, slaves, bandits and cannibals, exiles from lands I've never heard of. Some of them try to scrape a life from the wasteland, scrabbling in the rocks and sand for their own place. I cannot go on. The life that I left behind haunts me. The sun over the glittering spires of Belverus has forever denied me. The smell of my daughter's hair. I will pass the ghost fence, and this cursed land will finally end me. To whoever reads this note, I leave the last of my water and this message. Stranger, you have my pity. You do not know how cursed you truly are.
That doesn't sound too good, does it? Right, so our next journey is to spend attribute points. So if we hit R2 and we come back to our menu here, we're going to pop one in our vitality just to give us a little boost there, and then I'm going to wait because it'll want us to do that again at some point. Now it wants us to search for more survivors, which essentially is carry on your little run along down this pathway. So you follow us in, essentially you're heading north, so if you keep an eye on your menu, on your map, you're wanting to head up towards here. It can be anywhere on the river, but I always try and recommend to head for that same spot because it's the kind of easiest place to start from. So we head up along here. As you can see, my stamina pool dropping, and as soon as I stop sprinting it recharges again. Now on your own server you can tweak that so that your stamina can recover quicker, or you can leave it as is. A nice little jump scare there as you come up here. Didn't get me this time because I was expecting it, but if you're not expecting that, that will probably make you jump. So there's our survivor. Little book on the floor, as you can see it says press to interact.
Gods curse this sandstorm. We were forced to take refuge before the wind scoured the skin from our faces. There is something in the storm. Beasts. We hear the skittering of their paws outside the ruins, and their howls mingled with the screaming winds. The men are scared. I've put them to work crafting rudimentary weapons and torches from the loose stones and rough plants that dot this place. I've yet to meet a beast that liked fire, or the bite of the axe.
Yeah, so rudimentary torches and weapons, in other words, they tried to survive and it got them to do certain things. So what we needed to do there, as it just said, was gather stones. That's what I was just doing as that guy was talking. Now our next one is to gather branches. So now what we need to do is look for branches, which you'll see all sort of scattered around in the sand. So one there, 2, 3. Sometimes they can be quite hard to see, but if you look around you should eventually see some. Kind of all in these areas. 4. That says to interact, but it's not. Thought that might have been something, but it didn't look like it. Excuse me. So we've gathered that. Now if we check our journey, it wants us to craft a stone pick. Which is that one there that, as you can see, takes stone and branches. So we hover over that, click craft, and that will craft that in our menu. Then we're going to pop that on our bar. Now it wants us to harvest stone with our pick. Now you can do it on these tiny little bits as well, but it can be a bit fiddly to do. So the best way to do it really is just to look for big pieces of rock like that. Now it wants us to craft a stone weapon. So while I was gathering up the plant fibre while that guy was talking, because you're going to need a lot of this surprisingly, we're going to need some more branches also as well. So where we just were, if we take a look around here again, 1, 2, 3. Now obviously if you have your harvesting amounts increased, you will actually get a few more per pickup than what you would have done. As I say, it did used to be a thing that if you made a hatchet you could hit one of these and get plenty, but unfortunately that was one of the things the developers decided to take away. And now I've just made a hatchet because I want to use that to get some wood when we get down to the river, which makes our journey a little bit easier early on. You will get a point in one of your journeys where it wants you to craft a stone hatchet, but hopefully, because you've already crafted one, it should recognise that and automatically count that journey for you. So we're just going to take a look around here again. There's another one. And another one. So now, if we go back to our menu again, we want to go across to weapons this time. And we want to do if we can find a weapon to make. Now it's worked it. So now we go back to our menu. Whoops. Go across to, what am I doing? Back to this menu. And then we want to go why are we not finding weapons? What's going on? Another thing you can craft early on is a torch, if you need a torch when it goes dark. We check the journey again. Yeah, craft a stone weapon. So this is done in our own inventory. We need some more branches. That's why we can't do it yet. So we'll take a run around. See if we can grab another few. Like that. Stone sword, there we go. And we can pop that on our wheel as well. Follow the road. So now we need to make sure we're facing the right way again, which we're not. We need to be facing this way. And it wants us to follow the road out of the desert, so that means running up this way. Stick to where all this stone is. As you can see my screen flashing there now. When you see like the symbols flash or you get that colour across the top of your screen, use up the other piece of food that you had and maybe have a drink if you need to do. Obviously if it's your own server or your own single player and you want to crank those down a bit, you can do, so you don't get as hungry and thirsty as often, but if you're trying to keep it as legit as you can, then this is the best way to do it. Craft a bedroll. So back to our menu again. As you can see there, where it shows for twine, I'll give the little cog symbol, which will mean that it will automatically craft that for us because we've got enough fibre to create twine. However, we don't have enough branches. So again, we're going to take a little run around, grab some more, and then we will see now if we have enough. Yep. So that will craft that for us. Again, we'll pop that on our hotbar, place it down. Now we don't want to delete this, but we want to take it with us because we've set our spawn point, but we don't want to be respawning here. So we're going to hold square on it, hit return to inventory, which it does, and then pop it back on our bar again. Now it wants us to slay an enemy. Now this can be quite easy or it can be quite tricky. All depends on how you choose to do it. I'm going to make my way over this way a little bit, and I can already hear something. Now these guys are called shalebacks. These are always what we call passive or friendly unless you attack them first. And then you've got the little baby shalebacks. Now because we need to slay an enemy, we're just going to go for this one, so I'm going to use the lock on. Always dodge them because as you see they'll do a swipe attack. Doesn't help if you get two ganging up on you, so be very, very careful. Used up most of my stamina there, which isn't good. So we're going to run away a minute. Always time your attack, try not to use up your stamina too much. Dodge that heavy. Normally I wouldn't go with a sword, I'd normally use daggers or a mace, but just quicker to use that at the time. And as you see, we've lost quite a bit of health there, so we check our journey again. Now it wants us to make rough wraps. Which are again found in our menu. So I'll craft up some of those. Pop them on our hotbar and we can use one of those to heal up. Now this animation does take a few seconds. If you were to get attacked, you would get hurt at this point. You can't stop that animation. So we're now nice and healed up. Now it wants us to harvest meat from a corpse. Now you could use your hatchet if you want. Or if you've got enough materials on you, another thing you could do is craft yourself a stone what's it called, cleaver. I'm just going to cut this tree down a minute because we made this hatchet, which will give us some branches as well and some wood, which we will need shortly anyway. Not give us enough branches though, has it? So never mind. We will try this tree, see if this gives us some branches. Gives us one or two. There we go. Now what we want to do is we're going to take that stone cleaver, go back to the body that we've just killed. Now if you were to use a hatchet or a pick on that animal, you'll get, if you use a pick, you'll get more bone, a little bit of hide and a little bit of meat, and the same with the hatchet, you'll get hide and bones and a little bit of meat. But if you do it with a cleaver, as we've just done, you'll get more in the way of meat rather than bones. Now it wants us to refill our water skin, so to do this we're going to head this way, because now we're almost at the river, which is where we want to be. So we're going to head up and around here, and you can see that statue just in front of me. That is what is called the Sentinels, which is a really good thing you want to try and get to as a landmark early game. I always recommend to people to try and get to this first because there is an NPC you can interact with as well. One straight opposite and one there. There we go. The Sentinels. So we're going to come to the water. We can hit square to drink as well. Or we can refill our water skin by doing that. Unlock the primitive cook knowledge. So we go back to our menu for this. And then we can scroll down to this one here. You can even use this. This still works with a primitive cook. So we unlock that. Access or place a campfire. Which again, we can't access one because we don't have one yet, but this is found in our menu, and again we need branches. So this is one of my key advice things to people early games. You're going to need a fair few branches, you're going to need wood, and you're going to need stone. So certainly give yourself a bit of time, don't rush anything, just take your time, have a wander around this immediate area. You don't need to worry about those shalebacks at least. The only things to look out for are crocodiles, because they are obviously hostile. There's no such thing as friendly crocodiles, unfortunately, so you do have to be wary of those. But just have a little wander around in this immediate area, and then once you've got enough resources to make it, this takes branches and stone, so we'll craft one of those, and then we'll head back around here. And then we want to pop our campfire on there a moment. Going to come back to the edge of the water just here because it's a nice little safe spot where I know there's nothing going on, nothing's going to happen. So we pop the fire down. Now if you were doing some of these journeys at a later stage and you already have the certain item, don't worry if you've missed that journey, because it says access or place. So for example, an alchemy bench, and you've already done that without following the journey, when you try and do one of the alchemist journeys, just accessing that bench will still complete the journey for you as well. So we now have our campfire. If we hit interact, as we can see, it's got a stop and play button at the top, 10 slot inventory space, and a space that says thrall. So essentially that is for a cook. So if we find an NPC that is a cook in the world, we can place them on there and they'll help us cook our food. And then the menu on the bottom right there is the crafting queue. So we'd need to pop in a fuel. So we're going to put the wood in that we got. No, we're going to do the branches. Never mind, we're going to do the wood. Take those branches back out. And then the meat that we caught, or chopped up rather, we can pop that in. And then if we go up to the top here, hit play, and as we can see, depending on what your crafting time is set at, if you've got crafting time sped up, it'll go super quick, or if you've got it at the normal speed, it will cook at the normal speed. So that will cook all that savoury meat for us. Now we've got a little bit more of it because we use the cleaver. You can upgrade your cleaver as you go along to an iron and a steel, hardened steel, star metal, and even a legendary, but we'll look at those in a future video. Now that's all done. So now we can take the meat from that fire and we can hover over it, eat a piece of that meat, and we've just completed our first journey. So we'll claim those rewards, and then the next one now is survival shelter, which is another crucial early game important thing to remember to do, because there is a sandstorm mechanic in the game, which is a storm that will come after time, pass across the river, and if you are out in it, it will do you a lot of damage, especially early game, and potentially kill you unless you can find little shelters, or you can build yourself a shelter if you haven't had time to do that yet. One of the reasons why I say to come to this little spot is because if you pop your campfire down and your bedroll, if you can, if nobody else is built around here, reset your spawn point. So put your bedroll down, which as you can see is now a little marker on our map with a little bed symbol. If we go up here to this statue, which also has a large bonfire in front of it, this guy is a friendly NPC. Again, Shadowbacks are friendly unless you attack them. You can interact with this guy where we can learn an emote.
Veterans tend to smell just a little more like despair. I'm Arcos. Once a sailor, now a wanderer. You didn't think you were the only one, did you?
Oh, I did wonder.
You should go up north. There's whole cities of exiles up there.
Really? Well.
Farewell. I won't pin my hopes on seeing you again.
Charming. He's hopeful, isn't he? Yeah, I'm not going to talk to him in this series because any of these NPCs we run across, I don't want to spoil the dialogue for you all when you come to discover it. But you will see different NPCs like this guy around the map that you can speak to, that'll tell you different bits of story. But also, where his little tent here is, if you come under this, even though I've stood up you can see it, but if you were to crouch as well, if you want to get a bit further under, even while that sandstorm comes from left to right down the river, so long as you've got that little box on the left hand side that says sheltered with the house symbol on it, as long as that says sheltered, you could quite safely survive the sandstorm until it passes if you haven't had time to build your little shelter yet. So you've got no concerns there whatsoever about surviving early on. You can find little gaps around the rocks as well, but that's a really good early game little hidey hole that you can hide under and take shelter from the sandstorm. So if you want to know how to build the sandstorm shelter, make sure you're subscribed, make sure you turn your notifications on, because in episode 2 that's what we'll look at doing. We'll get our little sandstorm shelter built, and we'll look at getting ourselves a bit of a base platform put down, which is the next bit of our journey to help us get going and get on our journey here on the Exile Land. So I hope you did enjoy that. That's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for being here. If you are new here, do consider hitting the sub button. It's totally free for you to do. Helps me out a lot, and we are on our way to 1,000 subs, which is very, very exciting for the channel. Leave a question, leave a comment down below if you have any. And until the next one, Exiles, I hope you get started well, enjoy the journey. See you in episode 2. Bye for now.